The following conversation discusses a number of topics. They include, but are not limited to, stemming the brain drain from rural communities, revitalizing a region, partnering with political parties in an increasing polarizing landscape, and why employee satisfaction may be higher in rural communities. If you'd like to check out these specific subtopics discussed, look no further to the timestamps below. This episode features Will Payne. Will Payne is the managing partner of Coalfield Strategies, an economic development matchmaker for companies seeking cost-effective and talent-rich business expansion opportunities in rural Virginia. Projects include InvestSWVA, a public-private economic diversification campaign for Southwest Virginia, Appalachian Grains, a specialty grain broker for the craft beverage industry, and Energy Delta Lab, an energy testbed focused on leveraging previously mined land as a proving ground for the commercialization and deployment of innovative energy technologies. Will also leads business development for the Southwest Virginia Energy Research and Development Authority. He previously worked with Virginia Energy on developing the growing U.S. East Coast offshore wind industry and economic revitalization strategies for Virginia's coal fields. He was also principal of Bull Moose Strategies, developing bipartisan coalitions for Virginia political candidates on both sides of the aisle. Will is a member of the UVA Darden School Foundation Board of Trustees and is vice chair of the William and Mary Real Estate Foundation Board of Directors. He previously served as the vice rector of William and Mary's Board of Visitors, chairing its administration, buildings, and grounds committee. Will earned a Global Executive MBA from the UVA Darden School of Business and a BA in Public Policy from William & Mary. He published Mark Warner, The Dealmaker, From Business Success to the Business of Governing, a biography on former Virginia Governor and current U.S. Senator Mark Warner, detailing the lessons in leadership at the intersection of business and politics. If you enjoy this conversation, enjoy the content, please ask you to 1. Follow the show and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform, and 2. Follow the page on Instagram as well as Twitter at Overcoming the Divide. And lastly, check out Will's social media pages in the description below. Thank you. Welcome to the show, Will. Pleasure to have you here today, man.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, and thanks for making the time too. I know you're a busy guy. Was going over your bio, and all the different projects and companies you're involved in is quite extraordinary. But for, I guess, my benefit as well, give me more of a thorough background, but also the audiences, can you just tell me a little more about yourself, story, and what kind of brought you to this moment where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, just Henrico. Um, I have a twin brother, and so I think that from early on in life, we were defined as the twins, and kind of had similar interests. And it wasn't really until college where we really tried to figure ourselves out and what we wanted to maybe do in life and work. And a lot of I went to William and Mary. We applied early, decision, and really on a whim without even visiting the campus. But after my mom's suggestion, you got to go there. So we did, and we got in, and it was one of the best decisions I've made. But it was at William and Mary where really it was kind of the basis for the work I'm doing now and the work that happened kind of in between school. When I graduated in 2001, I worked on my first political campaign, and I was a senior, didn't know anything. And it was the race for governor, the nomination for governor. John Hager was lieutenant governor running as Republican. And I grew up in a, I guess, Republican household, and was, intrigued by his story. And, again, I didn't know much, and, he lost that nomination battle. And I thought, for me, politics, oh, I guess that's it. I tried, and, kind of went a different direction for a couple of years, leaving school, doing something totally different, going to Vermont for 2 years, and was a a hockey coach, ice hockey coach, and um, at a small prep school, Vermont Academy. But it was after about a year and a half, I realized, God, I don't know what was going on at the time. I mean, it was post 9/11.
Hmm.
It was really kind of getting more focused on politics, and remembered that I had a pager number from a consultant that we worked with. And so I paged him, and he responded. And that just kind of led to, geez, about 15 years of work in politics. And it just took that one phone call, Jeff Ryer, and, running my first race for the House of Delegates in the Williamsburg area. Again, I didn't know anything. Our candidate, Troy Lapatina, hadn't run before. So we were kind of figuring this out on our own, and had a blast, and not knowing what we probably should have been doing to win. Didn't win. But all these years of working for different candidates, I've probably worked on, I don't know, 15 or 16 races. I've lost count. Local, General Assembly, statewide, governor, U.S. Senate,
Hmm.
and all about Virginia. And I've been a Virginia resident ever since I got back from Vermont in 2003, and probably will be, the rest of my life. But all that work in politics has kind of led to my work today in economic development. And the basis for this work, it's all about relationships. And a lot of these relationships go back, these 15 years working on different coalitions, moderate coalitions. So I've worked for Republicans and Democrats. And I always say, I've worked for both sides. I've lived to tell about it. Not many people can do that, but, is able to work with the right people and able to focus on bipartisan coalitions, and all those relationships, a lot of them in business, help me today as we do. And what my work is now in Southwest Virginia. I live in Bristol, and we're just right there on the Tennessee border, and literally split down the middle of State Street, Tennessee and Virginia, as you know.
Yeah.
Uh, and, all of our work around lead generation, and trying to figure out what projects could come here, what companies could expand here, and what case can we make. A lot of that goes back to these people I've met over the years, and basically be able to say, give us a chance. Let me make the case, for the business case, for why you can locate here. Or that person knows somebody else that I can talk to. And so, politics, while I often say it was a mistake to get into, it absolutely has driven a lot of my work. And I really am glad that I've been able to meet a lot of people, and be a part of some really exciting, campaigns, and, enjoyed the time I've been able to work for some really good leaders who are still in office today.
Nice.
Um, yeah. So economic development, that's where we're focused on now.
Mm-hmm. And I want to touch on too, because a lot of your work deals in, as you mentioned, in southwestern Virginia, in rural, that we kind of classify as rural Virginia, uh, in part with other areas as well. But what what kind of kept you there? Like, you moved to Vermont. Like, what kept you in rural Virginia compared to, you kind of hear all these stories about people leaving their small town to go to the big city. What do you think
Yeah.
kept you home?
Well, let me set up why I came here. So, Southwest Virginia, we define as 13 counties and 3 cities, southwestern corner of the state, bordering West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina. We're 300 miles from the state capital. We're closer to at least 6 other state capitals than we are, at least from Bristol, than we are our own state capital, Richmond. And so it's easy for leaders, for residents of the region, to feel isolated, and to feel like they're not getting the attention they need, they deserve, from the state capital, or even from DC. And so if you look at Southwest Virginia over the last 20 years, and this is the challenge, and this is why I'm here, you had a population that was just over 300,000. We're now at 285,000. At the same time, Virginia's population has increased over 1.5 million. And so what leaders have been talking about for years is, how do we stem the brain drain?
Mm-hmm.
How do we keep young, bright people from moving away? And they're seeking opportunity, as they should seek opportunity. And so the goal is, how do we create opportunities for them to grow and thrive, and work in a region that they grew up in and want to be in, and make that, opportunity for them to build build a career, build a family. And that's been the challenge, because you have a region that, for years, based on, coal extraction and natural gas, which is of course driven, you know,
Hmm.
industrialized America, and driven our economy for years. We can thank Southwest Virginia and the people from Southwest Virginia for doing that. The coal production in the last 20 years has, dropped by almost 80%. And employment has gone from 20,000 to 2,000. And those are jobs that are six-figure jobs,
Hmm.
right? And there's always been discussion of, well, you just need to retrain coal miners to do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
And usually those X, Y, and Z jobs pay half or a third of what they were making. So why would they do that? And so what they've done is they've packed up and moved away. They moved away to other, skilled labor industries, including the, auto industry, and other, mining operations outside of Virginia. And so we've lost so much talent, we've lost so much history. And at the same time, young people, and their parents are pushing, young people to move away and look for opportunities elsewhere. So our legislators, members of the delegation, our House Majority Leader Terry Kilgore, and Senator Todd Pillion, and Delegate Israel Quinn, and at the time Senator Ben Chafin, who passed away a couple of years later, recognize, if we can't expect Richmond to solve this problem for us, then we're going to do it ourselves. And what I think Southwest Virginia has always, been, famous for, is people rolling up their sleeves, doing more with less. In this case, it's a homegrown solution. So what they said is, let's go find a private firm to focus on bringing new business here, new industry here, long-term sustainable jobs. And so what they did was they worked with the Tobacco Commission and pulled in private industry. And now this Dominion Energy, and Appalachian Power, and Scott County Telephone, and many others who are supporting this, what we is now called this Invest Southwest Virginia, Invest SWVA campaign. And we call it a campaign. And when I, interviewed for this back in 2019, I said, we're going to take a different approach. And this is very much, I can speak these legislators' language when it comes to campaigns. I understand campaigns, but I understand the value of bringing, certain operations and skills from the campaign world to lead generation. And it's that attitude of, we've got a job to do. We're going to do whatever it takes to get it done. We're going to be accountable. We're going to be held accountable, and we've got to deliver results. And so that's what we've been doing. And of course, it's been very difficult in some cases, but also very heartening to see how many people locally have stepped up, from our local elected officials and members of the community, and local businesses, industry, to say, we want to be a part of this. We believe in the vision of this
Hmm.
whole initiative. So that's what brought me here almost 4 years ago, July of 2019, not knowing what I was going to, was what I was getting into. I was willing to take a chance, and it's been one of the best decisions of my life, because of, I think, what's now resulted, from that work.
And from that work, you touched on a number of the issues dating back decades now that your area, that region has dealt with and faced. And you're touching on some solutions too. What solutions do you see moving forward, really alleviating some of that, or stemming, as you said, the brain drain, and not even just stemming it, but attracting young talent?
Right.
So it's not even like retaining it; it's just also attaining it from other areas. And a few things come to mind, such as maybe like more space, m- more reasonable cost of living, cleaner, kind of more in touch with nature. But I want to hear your kind of personal insight too.
You're exactly right. It's not just about keeping people here. It's about finding ways to attract new people here. I'm a great example of someone who's, chose to come to Southwest Virginia, and I love it. In fact, now I have a farm just, in Washington County. And as you know, I've, planted, with a
Hmm.
number of other people, about 2,000 apple trees. And so there's incredible opportunity. And we've seen during and since COVID, property, just like everywhere else, properties are hot right now. A lot of farms are changing hands. A number of folks up and down the East Coast are building either a second home, or maybe it's making it their primary home here in the region, a way to escape, but a place where they can, really see themselves, growing, and for years to come. So what we said is, we've got to begin with, like any campaign, you've got to begin with a vision, and you got to have a roadmap. And for us, it's a roadmap to, economic sustainability. This is all about revitalizing, a region, and even the region itself. You have coalfield counties dependent obviously on coal and gas, and you have, counties and cities along the I-81 corridor. Even within Southwest Virginia, there are, different challenges, and you have
Hmm.
some areas that are some of the more distressed areas of the country, and that's a federal definition of distress and double distress based on unemployment and poverty rate. So we said, well, we've got to begin with a roadmap, and so we looked at what are, this is not a what are the industries that worked in the past, what are the skills that our workforce have, the talent that's in the region, where's their interest among, the higher ed business community and our local government officials. What are they hearing that we should focus on as in terms of bringing new industry? So and with this also, regional, or it's a statewide group called Go Virginia, Growth and Opportunity Virginia, that was created under the McDonnell administration many years ago, and continues today, is an opportunity for, the state to be broken up into different regions, and for each region to determine, what its focus should be, what industry area should it focus on. In Southwest Virginia, the areas Go Virginia decided, the council here, align with our areas. So we said that, Southwest Virginia should build on its strengths, and it should build on strengths in 5 ways. That it can be home to high-tech companies looking to grow in non-traditional ways, that it can be a location of choice for data centers. And this is before all the challenges that COVID created. Of course, as
Hmm.
you are more familiar than many about the data center industry. That it can be, a hotbed for energy innovation, and I can talk a lot about that. A strategic location for advanced manufacturing, building off of the success of years of complicated, products for the mining industry. And the fifth area is a player in the craft beverage industry. And so in all 5 of those areas, we can talk about wins that we've had, but all of those are natural. Uh, I can make a case that it's a natural fit for the region. And I think some may be surprised about the push for data centers, or even some of the more clean energy, projects, but we're all about proving people wrong. And
Hmm.
there's so much momentum now in all 5 of those areas. Now, what we wanted to show is, first and foremost is about job creation. And so over the last, I guess, 3 years of making, getting projects across the finish line, we've have 789 jobs in 5 different projects, a good 183 million in new capital investment. And that's everything from manufacturing on a guardrail in terminal manufacturer, that's all about safety, to 3 tech companies that were looking for ways to grow, but instead of in the metropolitan area, they wanted to grow in a rural area, and we had to prove to them that they could do it. And then the
Hmm.
last being a met coal production operation, one of the largest, in the world, certainly largest in Virginia, and one of the largest in the country, with that met coal used for steel making, and a lot of that steel coming right back here. So that's where we're focused on, mostly on jobs. And we've created all these projects. We said we're going to focus on job projects as just as much as we're going to focus on these big idea projects, for lack of a better term. Big ideas, the 5 areas I laid out, and have had a number of initiatives that support that, because you've got to have a vision that you're going after. If you're able to get everybody to jump on board with a new direction, we've got to show the way. And that's where we hope these 5 areas, that's the vision for the region, in the future.
And when you're embarking on these projects and looking to, you know, have these pretty substantial accomplishments and achievements ahead of you, how closely do you have to work with, say, local policymakers and state policymakers, and even up to like the governor.
Oh,
How does that work?
it's all the time, and what I think what makes our operation a little different, um, it it drives our work. We understand politics, we understand policy making, and you think about efforts around lobbying, government relations. Government relations and politics. You can't separate those from job creation. It's all
Mm-hmm.
intertwined, and we've been able to kind of push certain buttons here to get some wins. And so, let me give a great example. So first, you have an initiative that the local legislative delegation, including the majority leader, you know, started. And for them, that was a risk because they created this initiative out of frustration that they weren't getting the help they needed, whether it was in Richmond or locally from a regional perspective. There wasn't a vision that was driving economic development. The local governments have been so supportive, have been great partners. I think the local governments here, these counties, these cities, also want to be a part of something bigger. And we've got to look at this from a regional perspective. A job in one county is good for the whole region. And there shouldn't be, when you have a job announcement, I don't think we see in Southwest Virginia frustration from another county because they didn't get it. I think we understand that a job in one place is good for the whole region. And that's an important mindset to have in
Mm-hmm.
an area that's trying to make a comeback. But let me give a great example for working in the governor's office. And I've been really proud. We have a really close relationship with the Virginia Department of Energy because of all of our energy projects. And right now, we're working about $7.8 billion worth of private capital investment projects that about 3,500 different jobs, assuming we're successful in every single one. And I start with the fact that we can be successful. Um, this takes an incredible team, and a team where we have people pulling double duty here. So the Department of Energy with its experts, and they know the land above and below the ground better than anybody else in Virginia. They and many have even worked in some of the mining operations. They know how to find the right piece of property for the right project, and that's the first step for any of these energy projects. But when the governor came out with his All American, All the Above energy plan in October 2022, it, you know, jump started our efforts around clean energy projects in Southwest Virginia and defining Southwest Virginia as a place for energy innovation. And so the day after he announced his energy plan, he announced our energy lab, the Energy Delta Lab, and a long acronym, Energy Discovery, Education, Learning, and Technology Accelerator Lab. The lab is a conduit for federal grant dollars. And of course, Southwest Virginia, given its status distressed, double distressed, with the federal government, with the Biden administration, areas like the coal fields are prime targets for these clean energy
Hmm.
projects. And so we're hearing from developers left and right, and we've got to pick the right developers um, who want to invest here for the right reasons. But having the governor stand with us, announcing that lab, a operation that's been in the works for 4 years, we waited for the right moment here, and that was when he came into office and when he could announce that, because he gets it. He understands that Southwest Virginia, in that case, in the energy plan, he laid out his moonshot, and his moonshot is to have the first commercially, viable small modular reactor or advanced nuclear
Mm-hmm.
reactor, in the country. And we're working on that today with a lot of different partners, and it's really exciting, along with a lot of other projects. So to have the governor's office step in, the legislature, and our members of Congress, both senators, U.S. Senators Warner and Kane, and Congressman Morgan Griffith, and then you have our local government, our economic development authorities of each local governments. It's a lot of people. I like to say I have a lot of bosses. If you
Mm-hmm.
think about all these different people, um, it keeps you on your toes. But that engagement with policymakers is absolutely essential to our success, and that's the model that we want to show. Is you can't shy away from politics. You got to really lean
Yeah.
in and use it to your advantage.
And as you are working with all these different policymakers, all different levels and all different agencies, How has increasing polarization, at least at the national level, at the minimum, affected you and your work and your pursuit to work with both sides? Where, like, the national level, if you touch this one person, you're, say, excommunicated from that party. And that's a
Sure.
exaggeration, but it's kind of getting to that sentiment.
Well, no, it's probably more true. You know, and I use my own personal experience. I worked for a lot of Republicans before I worked for
Hmm.
Democrats. And Mark Warner, Senator, U.S. Senator Warner was the first Democrat I worked for. But what I led his Virginians for Warner initiative. It was his flagship initiative that when he ran for governor in 2001 carried the day for him. He was able to make the case to rural Virginia and in particular Southwest Virginia, that he understood the issues that they were facing around industry loss, around population loss, because it wasn't the first time that he showed up during the campaign. He had spent years before it, even in his previous life, as you know investing in new businesses with
Hmm.
Columbia Capital. He understood the challenges, and that continued when he was governor. I think you've seen, I've been a part of, or been around, 6 different gubernatorial administrations, one way or another, inside or outside. And Southwest Virginia, Southside Virginia, to our east, are areas that I think every administration wants to focus on, and it's a challenge, and it's always going to be a focus area for a governor. But I think so. As a result, what you see is you have Republican a lot of local elected officials, Republican General Assembly members in Southwest Virginia. We have both our U.S. senators or Democrats, or congressmen Republican governor, Democrat-controlled Senate. And you're right. Sometimes you think, well, does anything get done? In the case of Southwest Virginia, and with the right people engaging, the partisanship, by and large,
Hmm.
most cases, doesn't exist when you're talking about jobs. There's no Republican job or no Democrat job. It's about jobs and investment. And I think it's places, like Southwest Virginia, around the topic of revitalization, that you can put your D or R hat aside, and really everybody comes together for the most part.
Hmm.
But it has been a shift in the last 20 years. I've seen it. Would I be a part of a race again? Probably not. It's a different world than I was involved in years ago. But what's exciting is you see some of these officials we've had. Both of our senators were governor. They understand the whole state. And our current governor understands the whole state. Has probably spent more time in Southwest Virginia than than many governors before him, and that's not easy given his schedule. And so we do
Hmm.
appreciate that.
And something I want to touch on too, with that you mentioned earlier, with your area, specifically Bristol, being 300 miles away from the capital of Virginia, and you being closer to a number of other states' capitals,
Sure.
and this answer may be obvious, but is there this disconnect in the community, in those communities, from you and the capital, and even Northern Virginia, where there is economic opportunity, where Northern Virginia and, like, DC, are seen, even though obviously DC is separate, but regardless, are seen as, like, these economic hubs for everyone who's just graduating college or just looking to find a well-paying job? Is there this disconnect in, say, Southwest Virginia, with these other places within the state, and almost this kind of resentment? Because understandably, on my end, if I was in some people's shoes in Southwestern Virginia, it feels as if they're being left behind, which is almost more of a sentiment that could be just for rural America in general. There's places in rural America that don't even have consistent Wi-Fi,
Right.
and that's not an issue in pretty much all metropolitan areas, along with kind of economic opportunity and other accesses to services.
Well, I've lived in Richmond, North Virginia, Hampton Roads, and I'm now
Hmm.
in Southwest Virginia. I've seen how different regions work together. Seen, of course, enjoyed what each region has to offer, and I think that it's very easy, if you've never been to Southwest Virginia or Southside Virginia or the Eastern Shore. Um, it's very easy to assumptions. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have, even when
Mm-hmm.
we recruit companies, we have to correct assumptions about the region. Sometimes those assumptions are purely just, in pop culture, and you
Yeah.
have to visit the region. And so we so it's very easy, I think, for those who live in more metropolitan areas to take for granted the services that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we've, the federal government, the state government, local governments have invested, incredible amounts of, federal dollars really kind of going into broadband deployment. I mean, it's becoming more and more robust every day, but we need more, more
Mm-hmm.
investment, and it's kind of that last mile. And so that's a great example where we take, where Richmond takes for granted during COVID, when you have, let's say, a household that has 2 or 3 kids, that they can all get on Zoom at the same time and there's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was a major problem for Southwest Virginia. And that's why some students were working or going to school sitting in the car near a public library where there's public Wi-Fi. Or
Mm-hmm.
parents, in some cases, I heard from a couple had to choose with one of those portable Wi-Fi devices which child was going to get the internet that day. And it's not right. It's unfortunate that we have those situations, but COVID really underlined some of the issues that we have. We border Tennessee. Tennessee doesn't have an income tax, a state income tax. Um, when Virginia was completely shut down, Tennessee was mostly open. And
Mm-hmm.
so our businesses, our restaurants shut down. And ultimately, I know, there was a phased approach to opening, and at least for takeout. Tennessee really didn't close its doors, and that hurt us. And we lost some businesses in Bristol. Um, it's so sometimes you have, in our region, you identify more with the region, the Northeast Tennessee, Southwest Virginia region more than you do Virginia, because you're
Mm-hmm.
bordering on, bordering these other states. And so that is a challenge. And again, I think what's really been important for us, and I'll take the state legislature, the Senate Finance Committee came down to Southwest Virginia about a year and a half ago in the summertime, and they usually, in the off time when they're not in legislative session, they'll go travel around the state. But to have Northern Virginia legislators, Hampton Roads legislators come to Southwest Virginia and see, one, how beautiful it is, how nice the people are, how welcoming the people are, how
Mm-hmm.
hardworking the people are, but also understand the challenges that they face that those folks in other regions don't even think about. The fact that the region's median income is $35,571, and having 2 jobs is more the norm than not. And so it's very
Yeah.
important for people to really make the effort to understand the challenges before they judge the region. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's been our push when we meet with prospects. We come right at them about the strengths in the region, some of the challenges, but we've got to correct assumptions that just generally people have, and how incredibly hardworking our people are. And let me give you an example. So we kicked off the initiative Invest Southwest with um, a push to say we need to get one tech company to decide to grow in Southwest Virginia. And so at the time, I was serving on William Mary's Board of Visitors, and Mirza Baig from Northern Virginia, um, leading a private equity firm, Aldrich Capital, uh, said he wanted to learn more about what I was doing. And so we sat down for coffee one day, and we talked about it. And he said, our firm, um, is investing in a number of health IT companies, and we traditionally just expand in more metropolitan areas. So he said, let's pick one company, let's try this experiment. And so, but this happened during COVID, so a period of almost 2 years, about 20 months, we took this one company, EHealth Technologies, which is based in Rochester, New York, and has folks kind of in other locations around the country, and said we need to make the case for why eHealth can expand 160 jobs in Southwest Virginia. and that the company will be successful. And so we looked at three metrics when that expansion happened: employee performance in their job, employee satisfaction in their job, and then turnover rates. And you compare Rochester, Southwest Virginia, in this case, it was in Duffield, Virginia, in Scott County, and you compare the other areas, the folks in Southwest Virginia perform better in all three areas. And so there's something about the workforce,
Hmm.
the people who are dedicated, who are team players, who are loyal if you're loyal to them, and you can't create that. That comes from within, and that's the talent that we talk about. That's the secret sauce we talk about, and that transcends industry. And that's where we begin with that. We begin with bringing our workforce leaders with us to when we speak to prospects, because they have direct connection with the workforce, and we need to make sure they're at the seat, that they have a seat at the table on day one, not the day after an announcement.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate all the anecdotes, insights there, and tag on to that too. The company that came in, the name of it one more time for me was.
Sure. Yeah, eHealth Technologies, and
Mm-hmm.
so what, and if I may, we
Mm-hmm.
decided, so at the same time we said, I think we've got something here. At the same time, we were working Earthlink, and Earthlink for me as a high schooler, graduated high school in '97. Earthlink was, you got that DVD that you could get free internet for a month or whatever it was, and you would toss that after and you get another DVD. And so that internet service provider of years past, but now they're in wireless internet, rebranded.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so we worked on them for about the same amount of time, and also made the same case that you can expand here. In this case, they reshored jobs from India.
Really?
We said, after eHealth was a success, let's see if it's an anomaly. Then when we brought in eHealth, excuse me, Earthlink,
Mm-hmm.
we said there's something here. So we worked with, Virginia allows counties and cities to band together and revenue share and other things. And so it's called a RIFA, a Regional Industrial Facilities Authority. Well, the counties of Lee, Scott, Wise, Dickinson, and the city of Norton, um, all banded together to create this RIFA. And what we said is, let's figure out if there's a model we can create based on the experience of eHealth and Earthlink. And so what we created was this fuse model around the opportunity for remote employment, around teleworking, and a strategy that we think will serve the region for years to come. And the result of that, and one of those is, how do we leverage our downtowns? A lot of funding is available for downtowns, and how do we revitalize some of these great buildings where there's new restaurants coming in and more
Mm-hmm.
life coming into? How can we create spaces for companies to expand there? And so Big Stone Gap is a great example. Big Stone Gap in Wise County, may have read the book, may have seen the movie. A lot of history there at Big Stone Gap. Well, that led to another Aldrich Capital company called Paymerang. Paymerang's based just in Central Virginia, in Chesterfield County, and they're an automated payment service company. Well, they said, let's give it a shot. And we worked with them for a number of months, I think about 9 months, and they decided to go all in and expand in a downtown space in Big Stone Gap. And so what we say is that model has been proven, and now it's about getting out there and making our case. If we can tell this story, because it's all fact based here, if we can tell the story to a CEO, I think we've got their attention, and that's what we're trying to do right now. We're telling that story of that progression here.
And those three factors were for measurement was performance measurement, employee satisfaction, and turnover rate. Correct.
Yes.
Well, to at
And,
least.
and, and let me say on turnover rate. So just that one point, when we looked at rates in Atlanta, where Earthlink is, and where eHealth is in Rochester, turnover rates could be pretty high.
Mhm.
In some cases, as high as 30%. And so what we saw with other companies in Southwest Virginia, there's a range anywhere, I think, from 8 to 15. And so that's obviously really important, because the cost to onboard people, um,
Mhm.
and the cost of losing people, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's an incredible selling point.
Well, and you mentioned CEOs being like intrigued by that, but I think just the general workforce would. You hear a lot today, especially post pandemic and even during the pandemic, about, you know, life, just quality of life, and how remote work has really provided and empowered a lot of employees to take that back, take control back in their life to a certain extent, and even like further their and like reshift their focus on things too, like what really matters. And I personally think hearing the first one for sure for CEOs for performance measurement, like you don't want to make a bad investment, what's the
Yeah.
ROI on this? But for the latter two, employee satisfaction and turnover rate, because no one wants to leave a job. Most people have reasons to, but regardless, I think that's intriguing to just the general population because it's like, and my next question is why? Like why like employee satisfaction too? Like if it's the same role basically, but different like location, like what does Southwestern Virginia and say other rural communities have that are like really, and like I have thoughts that come to mind as to why, but like I think a key part is like advertising because I can maybe think what comes to mind and that may be correct or incorrect, but getting that to like the general populace, I think is a whole nother issue to kind of like get to make it a competitive job market there in locations such as yours.
That's right. I think all it takes is meeting someone in the region, and it's when on the street someone will say hi, wave,
Yeah.
and look you in the eye when they do it. Um, I think you'll see a real sense of community. I've It's been made a lot of new friendships, and a lot of it around the work that we're
Hmm.
doing. I'm really proud of those. I see real sincerity around making a difference in the community, actually creating a community. And you look at a lot of the small towns where this work is happening. Big Stone Gap is a great example where one person, the town manager, uh, you know, has made an incredible difference on his own because of the vision that he's had. And you think about the message that sends when a company decides to expand from Rochester or from Atlanta. They obviously are signaling they believe in the region,
Hmm.
and now the region has got to prove that it was a good decision. But I think you look at, and generally speaking, a workforce, people that want to be part of something bigger, want to support each other, want to create a real sense of community, and that you bring that to the workplace. It's a place you want to go to every day.
Yeah.
You want to help each other, and I think that's taken for granted in maybe other places, but it's the norm in Southwest Virginia, and that's part of I think what drives those two metrics.
Mhm. And tied into a number of thoughts there as you were saying that, and number like people are just looking for fulfillment, and that used to be filled with the religion historically. People like gravitate towards religious beliefs for like that fulfillment and that larger purpose in life. And then say economic liberalization comes along, and then people gravitate towards just economic opportunity and career. People working long hour weeks and they see that as their fulfillment. But I think over the past like 5 years, but at least to me and what I've took notice of is really pandemic is that's not enough anymore for people. Like it's not religion exactly. Like for some people it is like spirituality is being like tapped into, but that's like part of it. And then a lot of people aren't finding personal fulfillment in their work. It's like what's really like what does what has aspects of both of those two things and can tie in both, and it comes down to what you said, like friendships, community, a larger purpose, seeing the people that in your community, actually knowing them, being part of something and not just going through life and just being there, just being like a fly on the wall, actually having a presence in where you live and actually being taken note of and you doing the opposite. So I do think that's really interesting that you bring that up, and I think that's probably extremely true as well.
And that's driven a lot of our work. I mean, you know my team it's me and a few consultants who help on very specific things. But for the vast majority, it's this large network of people who already have a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And whether we have director of a planning district commission, Dwayne Miller in the area that I mentioned where that RIFA is, or the head of the Virginia Department of Energy, or economic development directors, or retired CEOs who now spend more time giving back. And example is Mike Quillen, who's chair of the Energy Delta Lab, is also chair of the Southwest Virginia Energy R&D Authority. Someone who, I always joke, I mean, probably works harder now, volunteering and really digging in on these tough issues than he probably did in a lot of his working years,
Mm-hmm.
because he's really passionate about it, and that work is driving change. So we have this, people who are willing to do their job, but take on almost a second job, or change their focus, and that's a lot to ask. Um, and not many people are willing to actually volunteer to do that and step up and do that. But when you see results, it makes you want to keep going. And now we've got this large network of people who are pulling double duty here because we're seeing results, and because on the horizon there's going to be so much more success. So I don't know what it'd be like in other regions. I can only speak for Southwest Virginia, but feel really good about the future, knowing that all these people are willing to really, dig in,
Mm-hmm.
and join the effort.
Sure, I'm sure like a large part of that is like the purpose too, like the gratification you get from seeing, as you said, the success and seeing how you've benefited the lives of so many people and Americans and bringing back economic opportunity to the area that lost it for quite some time, or at least did not, wasn't really there. And to tie in on the questions that came to mind a little earlier, and you brought up, is what are some of the common misconceptions that people have about Southwestern Virginia, but maybe just rural communities altogether? What do you think those usually, how they usually look? And as you said, when you bring in like possible investors or business partners, you want to confront assumptions immediately, just so get that out of the way and kind of put together a transparent, clear landscape for what people to expect.
Sure, I try on a couple,
Yeah.
and one is that and I've heard this from a couple. I wouldn't say they were executives, but other people that we've interfaced with, that Southwest Virginia lacks the focus um, on workforce training, doesn't understand skilled labor, and that's
Mhm.
absolutely wrong. And you think about the skilled labor that's been in the region for decades, that made the mining industry so successful, that skilled labor that is still here, and that mindset around what it takes to be um, successful in your job. A lot of that is tied to how effective the community colleges have been in Southwest Virginia. We have four of them. And what I think is really exciting is you have four presidents who are willing to work together, leverage each other's strengths. And um, those community colleges are really those are the drivers for us, for all these projects I mentioned, and all the energy projects. They're going to be the drivers. Those are, you know, the ones who are really going to pull things together for us. And so I've told them that. I mean, we need them. And so I really, one of the challenges, eHealth said when they looked at expanding, and I don't want to,
Mhm.
use the city, that community college in the other state didn't really have much interest, or didn't have much to offer in terms of being hands-on, helping them figure out a workforce training program, how to identify talent. Well, our community colleges, um, our president personally stepped up and said, we can identify, and her team, a woman named Vicki Ratliff at Mountain Empire Community College, said, we're gonna we know our students, we know our graduates, we know the ones who are underemployed, we know the ones who want to get out from where they are right now and want to take on a new challenge and get paid more. And so they worked. This is all 2 weeks before Christmas, before after we announced the project, and they identified every single employee that ultimately, those who became employees, but the talent pool to be interviewed. And it's that incredible amount of hard work that went in that didn't have to happen, that others would say absolutely no to. They don't have time. It's the holidays. We're not going to help. Well, our people stepped up. So I think we understand what it takes to build a talented workforce. What we need is, it's more collaboration with private industry. You have to, for many examples, I could list here of times where a company said they were going to come or was thinking about coming, and got a community college on board to put together a workforce program and train students, and that company didn't come. Massive disappointment, right, for young people. And it's really unfortunate, too, a disappointment to the community college as well, because they worked hard to train people. So what we're trying to do is make sure that when we talk to companies, these are serious companies that are going to make a commitment and stick to it, and make the community colleges their partners. So I think that's one example. Our skilled workforce, I put up against anywhere else, in Virginia and beyond. And the second one is about innovation, about creativity. That Southwest Virginia, for some reason, some people believe, couldn't be leading, innovation, couldn't be ahead of maybe state government, where, we've got a number of examples where we're leading. So that Lonesome Pine RIFA fuse model for teleworking, remote employment, we were the first in Virginia as a region to develop that. We didn't have to wait to be told to do it. And that's the first thing I'll say about this initiative. We're not waiting for anyone to tell us to do anything. We don't work for anyone else. We are doing, we're going to execute our plan, and I'm not going to wait for someone else to give us a green light. And our legislators believe the same thing. And so we can be bold in what we do, and maybe others can't, but I'm not going to let anyone tell us what we can and can't do around job creation, around creativity. So, but the energy space, the clean energy space, is where all the innovation, I would say there's more going on in Southwest Virginia today than anywhere else in Virginia, or everywhere else in Virginia combined, because of the projects we're talking about. We can absolutely deliver on the governor's promise around clean energy in Southwest Virginia, including on previously mined properties. It's unique. It's also very difficult. And so having the right team in place is important. But we are thinking creatively about how to do hydrogen, how to do, pairing wind and solar and storage, and how to locate data centers and using underground mine water as part of geothermal cooling, pairing that together. We don't need permission. We don't need anyone's help to do it. We have the team to do it right here in Southwest Virginia. And so, part of our mission every day is we're going to prove people wrong, because there are plenty of people who've told us we can't do a number of different things, and who said we weren't going to be successful. And so, just like I'm sure anyone who says I can't do it, I'm going to prove them wrong. It'll make me feel good for a second here, then I'll move on. But I think that drives many people in the region crazy when they're told they can't innovate, or they don't know how to. They're wrong.
Got you. And thank you for everything shared, because I personally did not know nearly as much on the case studies that you're able to provide with Earthlink and EHealth Technologies. Amazing. I had no idea about those. But to kind of like wrap things up, is there any topic or question that I didn't mention that you like to touch on, or any last thoughts?
Well, a really exciting project. I think it's gonna scale over the next few years. But a region that, going back almost 100 years, has had a strong legacy in farming, obviously. But we looked at, could we create a new farmer model? For years, Southwest Virginia, farming has been part-time, whether it was wheat or tobacco or corn. It's a part-time job. It's a weekend job. It may ultimately pay for Christmas presents or whatever. And we said, let's figure out, as we think about job creation, can we create a new farmer model, a full-time farmer model for young people who go through a program like at Mount Empire Community College and want to create a full-time farming model that pays more than double the region's median income. And so what we did was we decided, well, it's specialty grain, what's used in in the craft beverage industry. And so what we said was, we don't know what we're doing. I never, didn't know how to grow grain, didn't know much about the industry, but we learned. We talked to enough people about it. We found the ag extension agent, Amy Byington in Lee County, and said, we need a farmer or two to grow malting quality barley, Calypso barley. And they did it. Yeah, we found a maltster that, malted that grain. It somehow, it met the specs, and it's, not easy to meet spec there compared to feed grain. That grain got malted. We sent that malt to a number of different breweries all around Virginia to say, hey, what do you think about our malt? Because most breweries today are, they're buying the vast majority of their malt and their grain from the Midwest and from Canada.
Mm.
And so our goal with this, what we call is, Project Calypso is the growing project. Project Thoroughbred is a grain terminal that we're building. It's all about how do we, capture a piece of that market, that import market right now. And we have to prove the supply side. At the same time, we have to prove the demand side. And so it's very much a new business proposition here, a whole new market for our farmers. So you, from time to time, can find beer made from, whether it's Devil's Backbone, or if you go to Michael Waltrip Brewing in Bristol, or different breweries around Virginia, and now some distilleries, that product is going to be made with Southwest Virginia grown grain. Really proud of that, and we hope to really scale that over the next few years.
That's awesome. I once again, no idea. So, and I'm sure no one in the audience knew about that, like especially where the sourcing would come prior in regards to that beer and grain. And then lastly, is there any pages or other methods that people can support the work you're doing and things to keep up with and follow?
Yeah, well, we work very hard to try to get information, out
Hmm.
there. Following Invest SWVA, on social media, or Energy Delta Lab. Those are both
Hmm.
energydeltalab.org and investswva.org. We're very transparent about what we do, to the extent that we can be transparent about certain projects, and really want to make sure people understand the kind of work that we're doing and that we're being accountable. So, staying in touch through social media is really good, and we're always happy to host people and talk to people about, what's going on here and how they can be a part of it.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you again for your time, Will. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. All right. I'll see you guys.